While all trials in Final Fantasy XIV are pretty much easy enough that we should always succeed on them eventually, some of them are definitely harder than others. So here I have collected 10 of the hardest trials in the game. Who knows, maybe you will discover a trial you didn't even know existed as a result. Just to be clear, the ranking here is about normal and hard trials, not extreme trials. Both because that can be a wholly separate list, but also because, at least for now, I don't think I have enough experience with all of the extreme trials to give a fair assessment of what could be considered hardest. That said, having looked through all of the existing available normal or hard trials in the game, the primary criteria to be a top 10 contender is pretty much the possibility of a somewhat average party with maybe some first-timers wiping. This also means that among the top 10 we may see a lot of mean mechanics that tend to catch players because it is their first time. Number 10. Zelenia. Between the most recent trials, this one has, at least in my experience, had the most prominent capability of getting kills, which tends to really extend the fight, which in turn of course gives more opportunities to get more kills. The primary contributing factor to all these kills has been the combination of purple donuts and circles overlapped with the reddish flower pattern AoEs. While this has been improved since the fight's release, it is still very hard to see, especially for instance, colorblind players, or at least so I have been told, making for a fight that can feel almost impossible to overcome for some players. The fact these kinds of mechanics can pick off individual players surprisingly easily at times also in turn elevates the stock break multi-stack to be a lot more threatening, as a low player count makes it hit even harder. Number 9. Shinryu. While it is exceptionally rare to see wipes on Shinryu, the fight is filled to the brim with sneaky mechanics that can one-shot you if you don't pay attention, ranging from the tidal wave right at the start of the fight, to the proximity AoEs in the ad intermission, to the enormous line AoE that shoves you off at the end of the active time maneuver, to both the ice and wind mechanics in the final phase, one often getting players to slide off and the other knocking them off all on its own. And finally, of course, the whole final phase's gimmick being that Shinryu gradually breaks the arena apart, making it even more likely you just fall to your death by accident. Long story short, the primary type of death you will experience on Shinryu is falling. This is emphasized even more by the fact this trial does not come up that frequently in roulette, so you can easily forget about all these sneaky mechanics and then get memed on all over again. Number 8. The Chrysalis and Nabrialis. The first phase isn't particularly deadly and is typically just a footnote, all things considered. However, Triple Spark can suddenly kill an unsuspecting tank, and the Orb Soaks can of course kill off some players if they are handled poorly. But neither of these things are really the problem. No, the real problem is the White Room intermission. The phase starts with Nabrialis putting a dot on everyone, which will run out in time if you simply run away from the vortex. Not that it matters much, but it does help when things do go sideways. Once the vortex is entered, all buffs and debuffs on you have their durations multiplied by 10, meaning the dot will last the whole phase if you didn't outrun it. Very early in the fight, a tear appears that can be cleared almost instantly with a melee LB, but can also be dealt with in a reasonable time frame by simply attacking it normally. At the same time, meteors are falling on the arena that must be soaked, as even a single one not being soaked can mean instant party wipe. For paladins, warriors and gunbreakers, this can be quite easy, as simply using their invuln and entering the vortex means they are pretty much unstoppable for the entire intermission. But then even a Dark Knight could get both Shadow Wall, Rampart and Dark Mind running for it, which should be fine. What ultimately matters about this whole intermission is that not dealing with the tear fast enough or correctly handling the meteors is almost certain to send you back to the start. Yes, even in Dawntrail. Number 7. Golbez. This fight actually includes a handful of mechanics that are almost like classic culprits for what tends to catch players off guard and kill them. Eventide Fall is 2 line stacks done one by one, which will kill anyone who tries to take both stacks. Another one is a mechanics combo that makes use of knockbacks to land you where you need to be to soak. The meteor phase needs players to soak 2 tower sets, and the healer becomes the center of a knockback, which may compel them to run far away, or if they end up in a weird angle, can catch unaware players. This additionally culminates in a line AoE through a healer as well, which is also not super clearly indicated and can end up killing players by surprise. That said, both of these mechanics are a lot more obvious than this third one that often racks up kills. Shadow Crescent is a frontal cleave just like Crescent Blade, but on top of that, a little surprise circle AoE occurs under Golbez right around when the slash finishes. Due to the fact the circle isn't really telegraphed much at all, it almost always hits at least one player if not 2, and while it doesn't always immediately kill on its own, the vuln stack and damage tends to make whatever comes next get you instead unless the healers are on point. Number 6. Ruby Weapon. Something quite unique about Ruby Weapon relative to nearly all normal trials is that both of its phases actually have a Harden Rage. Indeed, the timer on said Harden Rage tends to be so long that things have to have gone completely wrong for you to need to worry about it most of the time. But the simple fact that it has one qualifies Ruby Weapon as a mildly threatening normal trial, at the very least. Now, Phase 1 is for the most part just filled with the classic don't get hit kind of mechanics, although with some of them being presented in a slightly unusual way. Phase 2, on the other hand, starts off quite early with 2 adds that must be tanked far apart, which genuinely can sometimes stump parties, and depending on how long they do, the more problematic the rest of the fight may get. Another mechanic that can be very threatening are the meteors that must be intercepted, as even a single one not being intercepted can be devastating, and since the comets need to be destroyed, if whatever came before caused any problems, you simply might not have the damage to deal with them before things get dire. Finally, there's a point where you must hide behind comets to survive a meteor landing, which, again, can instantly take out several players, although you have plenty of time to deal with this. What really sets Ruby Weapon apart is that it doesn't seem to be very worried about having one-shotting and really punishing mechanics in a normal trial, but because these mechanics are spaced out with plenty of time to recover between them, as long as a single mechanic doesn't overwhelm the party all at once, you can often make it through and, again, never realize there was a Harden Rage to begin with. Number 5. Zodiark. What really sets Zodiark apart is simply the sticks mechanic, as this multistack does enough damage that if, say, 2 to 3 players are dead when it happens, it might just lead to an immediate wipe. Why this matters at all is simply that Zodiark has several mechanics that can kill off a player all on their own, which means that simply having too many players get caught can lead to a wipe to the impending stack marker. One particular combo that tends to work out exactly this way is Astral Eclipse promptly followed by Styx, as the 3 large AoE patterns back to back has a tendency to at least catch maybe 1 or 2 players and hurt others, enabling Styx to catch even more players if the healers are not ready for it. The other classic combo is Algedon, the huge line AoE shove across the arena, followed shortly after by Styx for the exact same reason. These combos suddenly leading to an unwinnable state makes the offensive use of Limit Break almost seem cursed in this fight, as it almost never fails that if you do use it, you almost immediately find yourself needing your healer LB instead. Number 4. Kugane Ohashi. The Jojimbo, nope, it's actually Greg, fight. It probably comes as no surprise that one major factor making this trial really deadly is the simple fact that it almost never appears in roulettes. In fact, these days it's actually not surprising if an individual only cleared it unsynced, considering how it is unlocked. This means that any mechanic that is normally easily solved by players knowing about it beforehand gets the surprise moment every single time. The first of these mechanics that can get surprising is the ad intermission, where both tanks have to run away to different corners to prevent them from benefiting from their damage reduction. It isn't unusual for one tank to try to stack them anyway, wasting precious time, and to just try and fix the problem, the ads need to be split even faster, which can catch DPS and healers off guard, as the ads, at least to my memory, can do frontal cleaves, just like actual Gilgamesh. The second thing that tends to cause problems is in chain, where Greg chains 4 players, and the closer they are to the boss when it resolves, the tankier the chain is. And it is very common for melees, tanks especially, to not even consider running away, making their death all but certain. And this can indeed promptly wipe the party if too many players are guaranteed to die from the chains due to not respecting them. The final thing the fight brings to bear is simply a lot of mechanics that do either unavoidable damage or difficult to avoid damage, on top of Greg's Zanma Zanmai setting everyone to 1 HP, which can frequently demand a lot of resources from the healers, making an extended fight, which, again, is very possible if things start to go sideways, very undesirable. Number 3. Asura. Again, a very hidden away trial that is extremely rare in any roulette as a result. Similarly, it is very likely that players tend to deal with this trial simply by unsyncing it with a couple friends nowadays. The especially standout mechanic from this trial is 6-bladed Khadga, the back-to-back half-room cleaves. This mechanic simply goes just fast enough that less experienced players find it difficult to move in time, as the snapshots are just so that you may feel compelled to run into the attack, which simply isn't always necessary in normal difficulty content to dodge a follow-up mechanic normally. Aside from this specific mechanic, the boss alternates between various mechanics that specifically come out frequently enough that I would say that it is the kind of fight where it can be difficult to get back up if you go down in the first place, making recovery problematic. Number 2. The Warrior of Light. It might be surprising that this fight is only second place, however, this fight's greatest culprits are, unlike the first place in my opinion, mechanics that are, once you understand them, very easy to resolve, and as long as some of the players know what to do, it is a manageable fight. However, it is still second place, so many of the mechanics are still scary. The first threat is Terror Unleashed right out the gate, which is a healing check that can catch unsuspecting healers off guard. The 2 other mechanics introduced in Phase 1 that can cause trouble are Absolute Fire and Absolute Blizzard 3, as Fire's Pyretic can absolutely cause a player to promptly die from their own actions if they ignore it, and Absolute Blizzard's Deep Freeze equally can land one or several players in a lot of trouble if ignored or not handled properly. Just in case anyone needs it, Pyretic deals damage to the player every time they do anything, whether attacking, moving or otherwise, so the easiest way to handle it is hands off mouse and keyboard or controller until the debuff ends. Deep Freeze is instead blocked by essentially the exact opposite. You have to be actively moving and doing stuff. Casting doesn't really count, or you get frozen in place and take heavy damage. The next possible problem in this fight is the active time maneuver. Everyone needs to succeed or you will wipe. That isn't very hard, but I have met individuals that actually had some issues with it. And right after, a tank must use tank limit break at the right time, and assuming everyone has only been doing the main quest, this would be the first time a mandatory tank limit break came up. So a tank simply might not realize this. Who knows if they even have limit break on their boss? If this is survived, however, a checkpoint is earned. There are 2 other possibly problematic mechanics introduced in Phase 2, starting with the lesser one, the Spectral Ninja's combo of a knockback into a stack marker. too few players in the stack can kill, and players might not be in agreement on whether to use knockback immunity or not, which can cause the party to spread out too much to deal with the stack. The greater threat, as a bit of a callback to Golbez from earlier, is Radiant Desperado. 2 stack markers handled in sequence. However, if you try to take both, you die. If for some reason the healers, which are always the targets, decide to overlap them and no one else in the party that can rest survives, this is an immediate wipe scenario. Before we reveal the first place, I would like to list a few honorable mentions. Starting with Titania. Her ad phase alone can cause trouble for some less experienced parties, as it is actually a quote-unquote real DPS check for some parties, especially if players are dead before the phase or during it. The second honorable mention is Innocence, primarily due to his ad intermission with the 4 ads that really should be killed in a specific order or you risk receiving heavy punishment that also makes the following ultimate attack do more damage. The third honorable mention is Zeromus, mainly due to how punishing the Void Meteor and Meteor impact mechanic is, even on normal, although it is far worse on extreme of course. The fourth honorable mention is Queen Eternal, exclusively due to her absolute authority mechanic, which is such an insane mishmash of stuff that it almost seems like an extreme difficulty mechanic of its own if it just did a bit more damage as punishment. Finally, I would like to mention the new Guardian Arcveld, as while it has some punishing mechanics, the sheer presence of the stake buff giving you extra max HP, extra regen, and the presence of the healing potions make the fight seem a lot easier to force your way through, making it a lot less threatening as a byproduct, even if the mechanics could be difficult or scary. And with that, we have reached the first place, the hardest normal trial as of 7.3 of Dawntrail, in my opinion. It is, of course, Thordan. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's Zoraal Ja. Already in Phase 1, the Vorpal Trail Spitty Blades can cause a lot of trouble for individuals. However, as Phase 1 does not feature anything like a stack marker, as long as a few players can survive, they can force their way to Phase 2. What really makes Zoraal Ja's fight so challenging for a normal trial are 2 separate things. The first one is that the raid-wide Dawn of an Age and Actualize, as the arena transitions, are very heavy for a normal trial, which can be extremely problematic if any players had trouble with the preceding mechanic. The second one is specifically the combination of Volox eventually concluded with Duty's Edge, which is a surprisingly heavy multi-stack. With just a few players dead, it can seem insurmountable for the healers to live, which promptly leads into anything not a tank also going down. And alone, a tank or 2 needs invulns to survive. What makes this extra scary compared to, say, Zodiark's sticks is that the Volox that precede Duty's Edge is the kind of mechanic where even if you are perfectly aware of how the mechanic works, you might still goof it up and get hit, or simply not have the experience to process the correct answer fast enough. This can largely be solved by putting a safety triangle on someone that does know, but even the suggestion that this would be necessary to consider is precisely why Zoraal Ja gets first place, despite all of the dangers the rest of the top 10 have presented. Do you agree with my picks? Do you feel like I overlooked a trial you felt was really hard? Naturally, this is just my opinion, so I would also love to hear yours, and I do want to reiterate from the start of the video that, indeed, most normal trials are very manageable, which means what really qualifies a trial to be considered hard is its ability to maybe get a wipe out of you. Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Twitch or Ko-Fi, links in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, in patch 6.2, the hard version of Thornmarsh was reworked. The logical reasoning for this is that due to changes to the MSQ roulette relevant duties, Thornmarsh would be the first 8-man duty a player would be forced to face, and just to try and put things into perspective, the old Thornmarsh hard often required team communication, and marking targets to consistently succeed, which would easily make it take first place from Zoraal Ja in this list.